Welcome to the Pelican Brief with your host, David Tapman.
Welcome to the Pelican Brief. I am your host, David Tapman. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a special guest in the studio this morning, Emily Chenevert, who's running for House District 66. Emily is an LSU graduate in journalism with a minor in theater, which is I find really, really interesting. And Emily is here with us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, David, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak and to share a little bit more about my campaign today. So.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I enjoyed visiting with you pre-production. And so I did a little brief introduction of Emily, but Emily, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned a little bit, I am a LSU graduate, but I'm from Leesville, Louisiana. So that's central Louisiana for anyone listening, and came to Baton Rouge when I was 18 and was at LSU. Graduated, went through manship school, and really started my career here in Baton Rouge at WBRZ Channel 2. And so I tell people, it was like I started out as an intern because, every comms grad needs an internship, right? So I was loved the newsroom. And then when Todd and Whitney were on the air for the morning show, I was kind of like a daytime, worked my way into a little job as like an associate producer type daytime for Todd and Whitney, and would prep the show, help for the next day, line guest, all those kinds of things. Love storytelling, love people, interviews, that kind of thing. And then after that, for a season, I went to work at Healing Place Church, which is a large church here in Baton Rouge, or in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And we did a lot of storytelling on weekends. We have a lot of big team, production team. And so I was basically in ministry. For anyone listening who maybe you've been in ministry, you don't know much about it, but you kind of wear multiple hats, I'll be honest. And so I was kind of a communications person, and then also helped with weekend storytelling, and kind of would manage all of our team in that, and really enjoyed that. During that time, Hurricane Katrina, when I was on staff, Hurricane Katrina happened. And so our church was a huge part of that.
No doubt.
So the communications efforts during that time really ramped up. Like, not your typical church, I guess you would say, during that season, because we had so many resources across the country that were bringing in things, and so we were like to help people, and it was really one of the highlights of my life, just to be able to serve and help people in that hard time. Loved that, served on the team, but really had this kind of urge to go to film school. Went to film school in New York for a season.
Wow.
For a year, and I was the Southern Belle in the city. That's what I like to tell people. And my best friends were one's from Canada at the time, and India, and Scotland, and there's just Louisiana Southern Belle. So they just wanted me to talk a lot there, I feel like. And so there's a Southern accent. So loved that. Did a film there and came back and started working heavily in the film industry. Okay. That's really, I had that creative brain, but also kind of have more of a brain of but from a producing standpoint. And so I was able to start as a coordinator behind the scenes in movies, kind of like from that $1 to $5 million range, and then worked my way up and started coordinating larger studio movies, a lot of ones that were shot in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, some in New Orleans, and loved doing that. I loved working with people from all different types of just backgrounds.
Right.
I mean, the film industry brings people from all coasts. I mean, you had New York, you had California, and then Louisiana, and people are real different, right, in these areas.
No doubt.
And so you working with people and learning how to kind of put a project together. As I was moved up, I started doing line producing and production managing. And that's kind of like I would say like a contractor.
Right.
You have a whole bunch of like subcontractors, and you're having to work behind the scenes, hire, fire, budgets, making sure the project gets complete. And I love behind the scenes in that. Really love working with people in that capacity. So was doing that for a season, met my husband here. He had 2 wonderful children. We got married. I have 2 more. I'm a mother of 4 now. And we have a couple in our 20s, and they're growing and doing their thing. And then our littles, they're in 2nd and 4th grade.
Wow.
And so 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And so they're my passion. They're my legacy. They are what I want to do. And so, I basically started to do a lot of that. That's a little bit of my background, kind of what I've done. Communications. Also at one point was a communications director for an anti-human trafficking organization.
Yeah, I saw that.
Trafficking Hope. And so that's actually a big part of my heart whenever you sit and you really start to understand what's going on behind the scenes with that.
Oh, yeah.
And we are in an I-10, I-12 corridor, so we have to face this issue head on. So that's another thing that I have done kind of in my past a little bit. So a little bit of ministry and media and communications has really been my whole life.
So you and I have a couple of connections because I represent the Louisiana Film Entertainment Association. So, and I am an actor. I'm not going to say I'm a good one, but I am an actor.
I actually think I don't know if it's still there, on the bottom of the LFEA email, there is this picture of like an alligator and different artists and people in the film industry, and I actually helped produce that shoot. I feel like at one point,
awesome. And then we actually are very heavily involved in Father Bai's Metatonia Gala that we help raise money for every year on human trafficking, and they're doing really great work. And I don't think people understand how significant of a problem that is here in Louisiana, and how bad it can be when you have things like, I'll give you an example. I know during the NBA All-Star game, it was a huge issue
within sports.
And so I have some local contacts in law enforcement. So again, just connected in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
But I appreciate so much your work in that. And then I would go to the healing place. I live right there, right? And so they were giving out food and water to all the people who were stuck on the interstate trying to get out of town.
I know.
And I remember that, and I have a number of friends who go there. So, well, thank you for that introduction. I want to talk a little bit about your district. We have a statewide audience, so tell people a little bit about your district. Obviously, it's a Baton Rouge district.
It's a Baton Rouge district, southeast Baton Rouge area. It kind of wraps its way, kind of almost in a U shape, kind of in the southeast Baton Rouge, everywhere from University Club area, Bluebonnet, going up to Burbank, and then the south side of Highland Road, where Country Club of Louisiana, that area. I'm kind of naming some of the big areas, and there Santa Maria, half of Shenandoah, the Tiger Bend, Elliott, Hoosiatu area. So basically, if you're looking at that Manchac line, really up into Ascension, that southeast area, that's kind of that line where it stops before you get into Ascension Parish. And so it's a big district.
It's a big district, and it's got a kind of a weird little wind around it from one end.
It does.
Because as we were talking before the show, when I come out of my neighborhood and I look across the street, it's not my district, it's your district.
Yes, exactly.
I am now in Barbara Freiberg's district. So, well, good. Well, let me ask you another question that we ask all the candidates, which is, what made you want to run for office?
I get that a lot when I knock on doors. Sometimes it's, why in the world, right? Because people get it. But, for me personally, I have paid a lot of attention both at the federal level and state level. And I go back to this, and I always say this because my husband would come home, and I will work from home now and doing some live event producing and different things to be able to raise my kids. And I'm listening to federal committee hearings. And he's like, no one does this for fun. No one sits and watches committee hearings at the state level and the federal level. And I care about policy, and I care about what's going on. And I think for me, having young children, you begin to see the world kind of through their eyes and where they're growing up in, and what the city you're in, the state you're in. And so that is a lot of my motivation, honestly, is my legacy in the next generation. What is our city going to look like? What's our state going to look like? I care a lot about education. I have young children. It's a big topic all the time. When I'm knocking doors and I'm meeting people, education and crime comes up a lot. And then business, because we are losing people. And no matter where people are, your listeners in this state, we all know that people are leaving our state. There's no doubt. So what do we do? Right? Yeah, obviously, lower taxes. Tax code is very complicated. If people want to come here, they're not coming here like they're going to other states if they're going to come to the South. There's a lot happening in some states right now, whether it's California, Oregon, New York, and people are starting to leave these areas, but they're not coming here. And maybe I'm just too hope-filled, but I think we have the best food, the best people. Yeah. I think we've got great family values, and I think that that's something that we've got to build the other areas, right? Education, and make it better. And I'm a big proponent of that. So for me, it was really just looking at my kids and thinking about the future. And then saying, I want to be a person that comes to the table that can disagree without dishonoring one another, but stand firm, right? Have great conviction, but respect each other. And I think that's something that I care a lot, that I feel like sometimes it's missing in the political arena. And talking to people that feel politically homeless or frustrated, I feel like sometimes they feel that. And I want to help that communications background that I have, bring that to the table and bring good change and help good government for the people,
Well, I think that's amazing. I hope you can do that as a legislator, because my son, LSU mechanical engineering graduate, had to go to Virginia to get the job that he wanted, and that's just
No parent wants that,
it
right?
breaks my heart. Although it's nice to go visit Virginia,
Right.
And then he has 7 other LSU engineering students who work on that same project, which is building aircraft carriers for the United States Navy. They're working on the John F. Kennedy. Yeah, and why aren't there incredible opportunities like that right here? We could be building, military contracts, federal contracts. It just needs more of that. So I agree with you. I will say the work you're doing in the film industry is part of that, right?
Yeah.
It's a diversified economy. Oil and gas is great, but we need other ways for people to be engaged and be a part of the process.
Correct.
So.
And especially young people coming out of school, right? You want them to feel like, look, they may want to go somewhere and experience life for a minute, but we've got to make sure that we're building the infrastructure, building the things for them when they come back, that when they're starting a family, like we are, is there a school option for them? I'm big on school choice because of, look, I grew up in a public school here in Louisiana, in Leesville High School graduate, loved my experience, but every area of the state's different. And in our area, a lot of families are Catholic, they're paying for private schools, they're paying for Catholic schools. So I care a lot about allowing the money to really help follow the child, let empower parents and let parents say, hey, you know what, this may not be the best school for my child, so do I have an option there? And I think that if young families, when they're starting salaries and building their own businesses, if they have that and they feel like that's a great place for their child, they'll come back. I think they'll be here, they'll stay here, because there's nothing better than raising your own little family next to your family.
That's right.
And I think Louisiana cares about those things.
I agree. And my son did not want to leave.
Yeah.
He wanted to be here, as I'm sure lots of people do. When I go up there, I cook a gumbo for all the guys and the gals.
Of course you do, right? Yeah.
It's always a little cooler up there anyway.
Yeah,
So one of the things we do with our guests is we do a little magic trick, right? So you were elected last night, and then tomorrow you start, first day on the job. What are you going to do as the state representative for District 66?
Well, I'll say, probably hit my knees and say a big prayer. He's like, Lord, help me, right?
Absolutely.
No, and I'm being serious about that. It's a big part of my life. But I talk about education a lot. One thing I want to get to know colleagues and figure out what are some of the things that they have been trying to push across the line that I agree with, right? Within education savings account being one of them. What are some things that they are really making headway on that they need someone to come alongside and help co-sponsor or help push it across the line. I don't, I feel like stepping in there, you want to learn and you want to see how things work, and just say, hey, who are some good players that are really trying to create good government, lower taxes, education, and the same things that I care about. So building allies, right? I think that's a big point of building a strong state. It's not just about Emily Chenevert, although I'm there to make a difference. It's about working with everybody else that has that same vision for our state. So that's very important to me, is building allies and working with people. And I would say some of the things specifically is, I mentioned education. Crime comes up a lot in my district. And I understand there's a role as far as every role of government. You've got the city has to focus on their role, and state and local police. But from a state police standpoint, what are some things we can do to help recruit and get more people here? And I think there's been some good work done with, incentivizing as far as getting police officers here. But what are some things that we can do more, like anyone that may be potentially retired? Now, again, I'm not looking at the budget. And day one, I probably haven't gotten through every line item yet. But are there some ways that we can work on if some officers have retired? Can they come back into the force for a few more years without losing those benefits? There are some states that are doing that because Louisiana is not the only state that is losing police officers. So I feel like as you research, sometimes it's not having the greatest idea. It's like, who had a good idea that worked in another state that can bring it here? And would it work? So that's a big part for me, because I think that when people have schools and they have their options and they feel like they're safe, I think the business side will work itself out. Now, we have to have low taxes. We have to get rid of the franchise tax. There's a lot of things we have to do. But I think that if people feel safe in their homes, they feel safe in their community, and they have great schools, I think that's a really good start.
Well, that's your economic development package right there, right? Companies are not going to take their employees and move them here or someplace where crime is high,
correct,
and put themselves in harm's way if they don't have to,
right? And
so that's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and I think I come from a communications background. I always say, sometimes people say, "Oh, it's just talk and it's just messaging." I think messaging matters. I think that all of us who represent our districts in our state. Because you represent your districts and you're voting and you're fighting for them, but your vote also it's also going to spread into the state of Louisiana. And so I think those that are elected, we've got to have this message to people that are looking to move from other states that are more rigorous, higher taxes, and they feel out of control. Come here. And I think from a crime standpoint, messaging matters greatly. I have a good friend that was in Oregon, and they were looking at where to come because they said Oregon was getting too hard for him as an officer. And they did not come here because the pay was better in Texas and the schools were better in Texas. So a great officer, but chose Texas over Louisiana, although they actually had more connections in Louisiana.
Right.
So we got to get those people to come here. And I think those are some things that if we could just sit around a table and have some of those conversations, what's working in other states, and let's maybe put that to action here.
No, I think you're right on. Those are all the key issues, whether you're here or in Shreveport or in
wherever you
Kennesaw
are.
Parish.
Yeah.
Those are all the key issues. They may change order a little
Correct.
bit depending on their local school system, but those are the big issues. And what you said about working with others, and this is all about relationships. I'm a lobbyist, and it's about treating people with respect. And
because you're going to disagree on things,
sure,
right? And that's
sure.
just part of life. There's going to be things you disagree on, but you've got to learn how to come together and figure something out. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to find where you're going to be on the same boat, but you have to be able to walk away and know that there's still a level of respect for each other.
I agree with you, and too often we've seen lately where there are people who make it personal,
Right.
and when you do that, it changes the world. So I appreciate you saying that, because I'm not sure that's I think we are affected by Washington, D.C. politics.
Yeah, for sure.
And
for
they
sure.
can't come to a microphone without attacking each other. And so it's
hard.
It is hard,
It's
but it
hard.
can be done. And I know legislators who have done it and done it well. So tell us how you're going to win the race. I mean, that's the key thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be a great legislator, but it's another thing to be a great campaigner. So
Right. Exactly.
So when the race is kind of a big job in and of itself. So tell us how you're going to win.
Yeah. So look, this is something that I really have enjoyed. It's difficult because it consumes you, but I love it. I genuinely like people, David. Like, I genuinely care. I don't see how anyone could do this and not want to see people face to face and see what their concerns are.
Right.
That's why you're there, is for the people. And so I am doing grassroots. I have a really good team of people that are helping me, whether it's a few people walking with me, my husband walking with me. I've knocked on lots of doors, and that is, to me, I think that's a big part of what I'm doing, because people can see me on the ground, and I'm asking them their concerns, right? Huge part. I'm doing my direct contact pieces, things to get in front of the face, in front of their face more and more. When it comes to like team of people, even from a prayer team, I'll be honest, I'm getting all of it covered. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
like there's all the things there, right? So we're like, I need help from all areas. But the main thing is just that sweat equity. And so that's one thing I tell people, is that if you probably have got something on your door. If you're not, you will, most likely.
Right.
If I can walk in that neighborhood.
Right.
You're going to probably get a text message. You're probably going to get a phone call from my team members that are calling. And here's what's awesome for me. I have people helping me that, they're not even really political. They've never helped with campaigns. They're like, I've never held a sign. I've never knocked on a door for anybody, but I'll do it for you. I've never done a phone bank before. So, and it's moms and grandmothers and grandfather. And it's these people that just, they feel that we need change, and we want good leadership and good government. And so, and I'm humbled by that support. I'm truly humbled by those that are willing to put their effort and their time into that. So we're doing all the things, and we're doing it all the way up until the 14th, of election day. So it's been good. It's been good.
I see your stuff, because again, your district's right across the street.
right across the street.
I ride up and down Highland, or I have a lot of friends in Santa Maria and out that way, and I see your signs. I know you're out there campaigning, because I know people in that area that will ask me if I know you, right? And you're definitely doing the right things, and I do agree. I respect people who want to run for public office, because it's not everyone thinks it's some plum job. It's not. It's work. If you're going to do it right,
it's going to be work.
It's going to be work, but it's usually people who want to see change and who want to make a difference. So
sure.
I appreciate you doing it.
And I'll say this: it's a family affair. My little kids, it's really fun. My daughter this has turned into a lot of civics lessons for her, because she's like, so Mom, when when I'm president, make laws, and I'm like, so here's the deal: Congress makes laws, and the president. So it's been fun. But they're knocking with me some days. And
cool.
when it was super hot, they sometimes they couldn't. And they're coming up and interacting, and I think that's what's interesting. I want them to understand that the why we're doing this as a family, and the why Mom is stepping out is because I care about the community, I care about my district, I care about the state. And so that's, again, that legacy of like making decisions for generations to come, where they see that and that important part of just, committing your life and being willing to serve. So
yeah, I did it for 12 years, and I loved it. What I loved the most, though, was the people. Right, and that I worked with, and there was nothing better than going into a school and meeting with the teachers and the kids and their families. And to this day, I will be somewhere, and I will be, at a grocery store or whatever, and I'll have someone run up and hug me and thank me for what I did for their children, when it was really the teachers, the principals. They were the ones who did it. I just tried to get out of their way and give them the resources that they needed. And state government's a big job. It's a very difficult challenge. So again, I appreciate you taking on that challenge. So is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience about the campaign or any other things before we wrap up?
Well, it's been awesome to just sit and talk and to hear, just go back and forth into your listeners. I would just say, I would love for people, if you're, in our district, hey, and if you're not in the district, feel free, check me out on voteemilychenevert.com. There's a lot of information there. But look, I was telling someone the other day, they were asking me again why I was doing this. And I said, look, I don't need another title. I said, this is not about title or being put on a pedestal. And I said, I carry two of the greatest titles right now as mom and wife. Yeah. And, there's very few things that make me tear up. But, you start talking about your kids and legacy. That's a big part of it. But I'm doing this because I genuinely think that people are looking for leadership. And I think our state has its best days ahead. And I think the only way to really fight that and move forward is to have that sense of urgency, yet positivity and hope. And I believe in that, because born here, want to stay here, always planned on staying here. Like, this is where I'm at. So it's like, let's do something and make it better. Yeah. So I just want people to understand that, that is my message, is that I think our best days are ahead of us.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for running and offering yourself for public service. Thank you for being a guest on our show. As we move along and get to runoffs, we'll have you back if you'd like to come and check us out.
Absolutely.
And so we are the Pelican Brief. I'm David Tapman, your host. You can find us on all of the podcasting platforms. You can also find us on social media at Pelican Brief 225. You can find us on YouTube at The Pelican Brief 225, and you can email us at thepelicanbrief225@gmail.com. So thanks again. That's our show for today, and we'll see you next time.
The Pelican Brief is an off-script production.